these people out here at this refuge were just immediately attacked and like, Al Qaeda, yeehaw, they're a bunch of ignorant, rednecks. Let's send them a bunch of sex toys and make jokes about how they're terrorists and, want to, I'm kind of sickened by it a little bit. And anybody who actually knows me, I'm rude, crude, socially unacceptable. I'm a coarse person. I have a very twisted sense of humor. But just watching this, and the live stream that's coming out of the occupation, okay, if you look at the comments being made to those people, it's, it's hard to describe my disgust, really.
What do you think that's all about? What do you think has been triggered in the human, left to respond so vehemently, so in such a way? What's been triggered there?
Sure. I've tried to understand as a layperson how brainwashing works in contemporary American societies my entire adult life. And my first response to that question, the way you phrased it, is it's just not the left. It's not just the left. I'm sorry. The right, when there's Tamir Rice, when there's Mike Brown, when there's Eric Gardner, when a black person or a person of color is killed or gunned down by police, they're cheerleading for the for that person. Or it was obviously a justified shooting. When Darren Wilson, in my humble opinion, unjustifiably murdered Mike Brown, the right-wingers started up a crowdfunding thing and raised $1 million to give Darren Wilson for, I guess his pain and suffering or whatever, even though he was on paid leave. So he made $1 million off of social media. So I don't really see it as a left or right thing, because the right does the same thing. They all get together on social media and cheerlead for the destruction of black bodies, the destruction of white bodies, the destruction of Native people's bodies, just because they happen to have a differing political perspective. But to answer your question, I believe it has a lot to do with this divide and conquer thing. I believe that the people that actually run the country are more concerned with actual physical resources than they are with money. And the end game is to reduce population eventually. But in order to do that, they're going to have us fighting each other. I think mainstream media and let's just call them agents of change. I believe that people are strategically placed in places of influence to guide society. And these folks foment the fight between left and right. They foment the fight between Democrats and Republicans. They foment the fight between various anarchist groups. Anarchists come in flavors. There's anarcho-syndicalists, there's anarcho-primitivists, there's, anarcho-capitalist or market anarchists like myself, and we're all divided into these little subcategories. And the divisiveness is encouraged, and what that does is have us focus on fighting one another, so that the elites, the people with all the power, they own all the good land, they own all the good water resources, they own everything. And if we are less concerned with trying to manage resources ourselves as individuals, they are able to manage the larger amount of power, land, water, all these precious resources unimpeded. So we're being encouraged by what I would call agents of change to fight amongst ourselves. Because it's, to quote a guy I used to work for, Clyde Lewis, it's not a red state versus blue state thing, it's the state versus you. A lot of this also has to do with Hegel's dialectic. Okay, Alex Jones talks about this a lot on his show, problem, reaction, solution. What is it? Basically, you have a fight in the political consciousness between two opposing ideas, but the government fomented the fight in the first place, and they want they already have a written piece of legislation whether it be the Patriot Act or some kind of boilerplate solution that they preconceived of in the first place. And when people engage in this fight between right and left, the controllers, the ruling oligarchs, go ahead and say, "Oh, well, here's this piece of legislation that restricts free speech, or here's this piece of legislation that restricts your property rights, or here's this lovely piece of legislation that would, make sure that no poor little kids get shot in schools anymore." There you have it. Something else. I think the way that the school system works in our public education system, it's a beautiful brainwashing engine. And I could go through that just briefly. Common sense analysis without a lot of reading. Okay, from the time that you go to kindergarten until you're at a college, there's a methodology that you're taught. And here it is. Okay, first of all, in school, everything's regimented. Everything is timed. There's 30 kids in a school if you're lucky. If you're not in a low-income school, sometimes there's 40 per schoolroom, and there's a teacher. Everything is timed and managed. Your time is managed by a ruler or controller. There's bells telling you which time and which period you have to go through. So it's all very regimented. Okay. Basically, this is the American public education system in the nutshell. Study, 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 memorize, 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 take the test, and forget it.
Right, and never look within.
Right, yep. And then forget it. Do the test, get your grade, and then you're on to the next thing to memorize, right?
So that's, let's take it back to controlling the narrative for a minute here, because that's really what it's all about.
Right.
And we're at a time now where social media is used very adeptly to control the narrative.
Absolutely.
So when we come back from the break, we'll talk more about this. And thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, sounds fun. Still on the phone if you turn the break.
Hi, everyone. We're back. You're listening to The Bridge with Kira. I'm Kira Young, and I'm talking to Mike Bluehair from Film the Police Portland, who recently took a trip to the animal refuge site where the Bundys had taken over and their crew, and he was there for everything as it went down. And he documented everything with his camera. So we're talking to him. We got into a conversation about controlling the narrative, and so we're going to continue with that conversation and about his unique perspective as somebody who documents the truth. You there, Mike?
Yeah, of course, I'm right here.
Okay, great. So we talked a lot about, wouldn't it be great if the left and the right and all the races and classes got, or so-called classes, there's really just two. There's the super, elite, and there's everyone else.
Yeah, the
Got
haves and
together.
have-nots. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all illusion. The whole middle class thing, and as it all evaporates before our eyes, we can see that it's an illusion. That we're
Agreed.
really all in the same boat. So there's some powerful forces that need to control the narrative with these type of situations, so that
Sure.
it keeps us all separated, as you were saying.
Well,
It keeps us divided and conquered.
hmm have you heard of something called astroturfing?
Um, I don't think so.
Okay, astroturfing is a slang term for something. Here's the deal. Governments and corporations hire people to go on the social media and masquerade as your average Joe, your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker. And astroturfers will go on and post in conformity with a specific political or social, try to control the narrative. And it's not a conspiracy thing. You just Google astroturfing, controlling the narrative. The Pentagon has gone ahead and admitting, a lot of people criticize Alex Jones, and I do too. I criticize him quite a bit. I think that he makes a lot of money from exploiting, fomenting fear, But every so often he'll report something that no one else either has the balls to or that no one has figured out how to report, and it ends up being right on, If you look at some of Alex Jones's earlier documentaries, that guy predicted very accurately a whole lot of stuff that's going down right now. So, you have to give the man his due. You might not like the dude, but, every once in a while I'll check out Infowars.com just for that reason, But anywho, I saw on his website and, confirmed it, by looking where he linked it from. The Pentagon has admitted that they have computer programs. They can have one guy or girl, one of these vitamin D deficient MIB types in a basement, drinking too much Red Bull and not getting enough sun, sit down at a computer terminal and use one of these computer programs to where they make a post on social media. And this computer program clones them as if though they are, 30, 40, 100 people, each person. And they post all over the place in this big long list of social networks. And, they can be one person arguing as if though they're 100, and the Pentagon is actually, they consider the American people a propaganda enemy. Okay. The ruling elite use the military industrial complex to propagandize us because they view us as an psychological enemy in a battle space. That's the way that we are perceived. So there's a massive amount of subtle and not so subtle propaganda being directed at the American people constantly. But I really do want to go right back to a second to finish my thing about the way the school system manipulates people's minds, if I may.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the whole time you're going through school, you're basically taught the same basic formula from kindergarten until you're out of college, which is just study, cram, memorize something, and then forget it, right? So you go through, the first 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years of your life doing this pattern, okay? Now, when you get out into the world, how does the mainstream media report something? If it's a big story, you get a massive amount of interest, you get a massive amount of oversaturation of reporting, and then the story's dumped and you're on to the next thing. That parallels your classical conditioning that you've had since the time that you started learning your colors and how to add 2 plus 2 until you're in college. That's not by accident. That's methodical. That's piggybacking your study, memorize, cough up information, and forget it. They're training us to have a short attention span and to be divided into right versus left, because all the mainstream media outlets portray a specific party line. It's either left or right. So they're polarizing our brains into this left-right consciousness. And then one other thing, okay, I figured out what's going on here in this one aspect, okay, and I'm reasonably sure I'm correct about this. Okay, basically, we have a collective fight in our consciousness, in our social fabric as Americans, between mommy and daddy. Okay, the right, the political right, is a father figure. It's a solar, I'm going to protect you from external enemies, a hard man, male type. You know, we're having to act now and protect you from the scary immigrants, or we have to go in other countries and fight and be hard and be strong. And the right's going to protect you as this father figure. And the left is a mommy. The left is about entitlements and about, protecting people from cradle to grave, and more of a socialist type thing. And, we're going to put government in there, and mommy's going to take care of you and, feed you and clothe you and make sure that, the daddy's not going to beat on you, But the thing is that what mommy and daddy is not conveying to us through the mainstream pundits, through the left and the right battle that's going on in our social psyche, or our social fabric, is that mommy and daddy are sociopaths. Mommy's pretending to give you entitlements when she's actually giving you control. Daddy's pretending to advocate to protect you, but what he's really doing is sticking the military-industrial complex on you. So mommy and daddy are pretending to act like they have emotions, pretend that, there's a lot of emotionality being portrayed to the American people by the right. We're so passionate about liberty and the Constitution and protecting you and making sure that big government doesn't come after you. And then the left is so passionate about explaining that and protecting your entitlements and making sure that we have a safety net program. But mommy and daddy are sociopaths. What they both want to do is to control and dominate us. And basically, your political ideology can basically be boiled down to, who you like more, mommy or daddy. Government replaces parents for adults. And that's my theory. That's my thought on how this whole thing works.
Well, that's a great observation, and I can see it on a lot of other different issues as well. Vaccines, for instance. It's always baffled me, how people can't question that. How, you have to be a right-wing nut if you don't want your child to be vaccine injured for the sake of big pharma making money. That you have to trust every scientist out there because they know more than you. So
they're doctors. They should be in charge.
Right. Right. But I say question it all.
Absolutely.
Because, that's the struggle for what? Individuation.
Yes, absolutely. The struggle for cognitive liberty,
Right.
I mean, and it's hard. It's hard for me to, I fall into it. I fall into this false fight, every once in a while, something to stimulate me emotionally, and I'll start like arguing really passionately, and I'm like, wait, the only way for me to be truly free is for me to subdue my passion with logic.
Well, I can see how that's a good thing. Probably, probably a good thing to do that. But I also think that there's a difference between anger and moral outrage. And sometimes moral outrage, calls for, I'm not saying violence, but for some sort of expression of, we're not going to take this anymore. We're just not. It's over.
Agreed.
It's done.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that self-defense, defending yourself and your family is a natural right of humans. You know, if something is trying to annihilate you, whether it be a political system or an individual, in my worldview, it is perfectly morally justifiable and correct to annihilate that which is trying to annihilate you. That's just my humble opinion. But yes, I absolutely agree with you. Self-defense. If someone's trying to kill you, if someone's trying to, perpetrate some sort of a genocide, I believe that it's perfectly natural and justifiable to defend oneself with, to quote Malcolm X, with any means necessary. And that's just my thoughts on the matter. I'm not advocating violence. Everybody has to decide what the line in the sand is for them. The only thing I ever want to shoot with is a camera. I go into situations like this unarmed. But there's plenty of weapons everywhere around me. Like, I have this tiny little 3-inch knife, and it's for cutting fruit.
Right. And veggies too. Get your veggies.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a fruit cup this morning and a bunch of chicken. I love me some chicken.
So at the beginning of the show, you were talking about your fantasies. Your fantasies basically of anarchist utopia. And I get into those fantasies as well, because I think that at the core of every human, there's some sort of genetic memory of a time where we did live in an anarchist utopia and where we were really truly free.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
no, so I wanted to, I mean, do you think that basically all of these different groups of anarchists that are divided up in all these different flavors at the
Yeah.
core, that they all
Baskin
really feel
Robbins,
that way?
31 Flavors of Anarchist. I
Yeah.
think that we like to fight. If you want to just talk about anarchists, we like to fight on social media over who's right. The anarcho-communist and anarcho-socialist and the ANCAPs like myself or anarcho-capitalist. We're caught up in this thing where we like to advocate for our own little thing. But I have to. You said a word that kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. So the idea of utopia. I think that fascists and totalitarians portray the idea of a utopia as a means to control. Without a very deep analysis of anarchism, I like to explain things in very simple, kind of plain English sort of ways for your audience, because I don't think anarchism really gets a fair shake in American political discourse. So allow me to explain what an anarchist is in a nutshell. Okay, it's simply this: when a slave, let's say, and they're enslaved by their mind, not physically, but when a slave encounters a moral situation and they're deciding what to do, how to act, the slave is going to ask, is it legal? And then act. A free person, okay, this is an anarchist perspective, a free person is going to ask, is it moral? Is it correct? Is it right? Is it just? And then act. If people would ask themselves that question before acting, when they're encountering a moral quandary, we would have less need for government and laws, because people would be acting from a perspective of enlightened self-interest, meaning whatever I do to Kira, I'm ultimately doing to myself. Whatever I do to this random person on the street, ultimately it could harm myself. I am fully willing to accept the idea that anarchism right now being implemented on a mass scale would not work, because I feel that humanity has not arisen to a point socially and psychologically to where people can take responsibility for their own lives and their actions fully enough to live in a massive anarchist society. That said, I think anarchists could live in groups of, say, 100 or 200 and live separate in little communities. I think that would work very well. And there are hundreds of examples of little communities like that that have survived throughout the 20th century and some in the 21st century. Black Bear is one of them. Like just Google, Black Bear anarchical commune or whatever, you'll find that. But anywho, I believe that anarchism in mass, as applied to a country of 300 million people, probably would not work. And part of that has to do with people are enslaved by the statism. People are not conditioned. They don't have to think for themselves. They don't have to take responsibility for their own lives and their own actions from the time that they start in kindergarten until they get out of college. That's the responsibility of the teacher, the principal, or the power structure, or the law, or your parents. A lot of people I know that homeschool do it because they want their children outside of the system. And I know, I'm not saying any names, but I know some anarchists that homeschool their children for the same reasons that right-wingers do it. They don't want their kids growing up being brainwashed and not being able to think for themselves and not to be a sovereign individual anymore, because children are being homogenized into this consensus reality way of thinking where, if the majority of the room says that this is what's real, then that's what's real. It's scary. It really is scary. That's what anarchism.
And when our children, their natural selves come out in all of that and want to be free, then they're drugged. That's the other thing is now they're drugging them. And they're, as they have been adults for a long time, but now it's a real push, and schools make money off of it. They make money if they put a kid on drugs, but don't do drugs. They
did that to me. Oh yeah.
What? Yeah. So you hit a lot of points there, and I definitely agree that the small anarchist communities are what practically can work now in the today. And our country is definitely filled with people who aren't ready to take responsibility for their own actions. And right now, with the way things are structured, when you ask yourself that question, is it moral? Is it right? Rather than is it legal? You also have to be prepared for the consequences of asking that question, because our power structure is not a moral power structure. And
exactly.
So, we're basically walking Jesuses. We will see consequences for doing the right thing.
Yeah. If I hurt somebody by accident or I break your stuff, I, as an anarchist, I first think, how can I fix that? It's my mistake. I'm going to try to take responsibility for this. Are you there?
Yes,
Hello?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. And then I try to act, but you're absolutely right. But I also get this apprehension as soon as I start trying to be an anarchist and take responsibility and make that person whole for the mistake I made. I'm also thinking the possible legal consequence. So my mind's always at odds, because there's a lot of stuff I do that, if it's a law that I don't find moral, or if there's a law that I find that doesn't make sense to me, I'm not going to follow it.
Sure.
I mean, personally, I don't smoke marijuana. I'm allergic to it. It makes me throw up.
I'm sorry.
But I think putting people in cages for it and turning them into a monetary resource for the private prison industrial complex is total BS. I think that slavery 2.0 being perpetrated against black and minority people and using the drug war as the primary vehicle to round them up, the U.S. prison system may as well be a 1800 slave market, because they're traded openly on the stock market. I don't see a difference. I really don't see a difference. No, I see no difference at all. Also, in my worldview, I believe that taxation is theft. Government supposedly was instituted because of a need for it, a moral justification, this social contract that government is somehow going to protect you. But I mean, if you think about it, okay, what a cop is, in my worldview, in an anarchist worldview, a cop to me is the most naked, honest expression of what government is. When you break the law, it's the cop's job, according to the way their job is written, is to be impartial, to enforce law without passion, right? So the cop's job is to meter out violence on behalf of the state. So if someone attacks you, you're supposed to, rub some sand on it or put a Band-Aid on, call the police to help you. But the thing is that's so illogical to me. A cop can't unshoot you. A cop can't wave a magic wand and unrape you. A cop can't miracle a bullet out of your butt. A cop can come along and write some paperwork out and, label two people, one a victim and the other an assailant. And personally, I do not want to be a victim, and I don't want to ever be an assailant. So as an anarchist, I see cops as basically the most naked, honest expression of what government is. Government is force. People have been duped into, voting for a politician to meter out force on their behalf because they are too chicken, too corrupt to take responsibility for their own actions. That's my thoughts on what government is.
I would agree. This brings us to an interesting question that came to me while you were talking about the police, and basically they evolved out of a slave catching force. I mean, that's kind of what they are,
Yes.
and how they're becoming more militarized. Do you think? Okay. Do you think that the whole myth of our country, the Constitution, its forming, all that we're taught in school is exactly that, a myth, like Thanksgiving, like it really is supposed
I
to?
think there's a culture of something that people on the left call, and they're absolutely right on about it, American exceptionalism. Like this myth, that somehow America is a shining city on the hill, and we wouldn't ever become totalitarian or fascist in nature. So people don't put themselves on guard about it, But that's where we're going incrementally. We're becoming more and more oppressive. I mean, one of the reasons why you're getting, honestly, I think one of the reasons why police accountability is becoming more prevalent and more talked about in mainstream culture is because white folks now, because I believe in the concept of white privilege. I don't take it overboard, but I do understand that that's something that's real. But white folks now are experiencing, because of the shift between race and class, now the underclasses, it's a mixed bag of races that are being oppressed and tyrannized by cops on the regular now, as opposed to times in the past when it was more of a racial divide. White folks now are experiencing what colored folks, blacks, Indians, Mexicans, the Chinese that were brought over here as cheap labor, what they've experienced for hundreds of years, right? But now, people that, since the middle class is becoming eaten away, that white folks are starting to feel it and physically, they're not as removed from it. And that's one of the reasons why I believe in our culture that we are starting to become more critical of police,
And that's why their response has to be all the more tricky. That's why they have to control the narrative even further, because it's starting to shine through. What's really going on is starting to shine through. So they have to control our ability to see what they're really doing to us. The more, because let's face it, the elite, most of everything is not enough for them. They want it all. They want it all. So
Oh yeah, every grain of sand.
and the way that I put it is we're all on the reservation now. So, and we are. We're all on the reservation now. So, what do we do from here? And there are so many forces to keep us separate and
Hmm.
to keep us fighting each other instead of using our collective power to take control of our own lives.
That's very well put. I mean, that's very well put. I think that um, one of the greatest things that, well, let's call them magicians, just for lack of a better term. The manipulators, whatever you want to call these people in society that actually control and hold the reins of power. Um, that's one of their greatest tricks. That's what they spend most of their energy on, actually, is to create that feeling of helplessness, isolation, and separateness. Okay, because we the people, not to just talk about, the the body politic, whatever, the masses of human beings outnumber the elite, literally, millions to one, and that is the only thing that keeps them in power is our feeling of separation, our feelings of isolation, our feelings of disempowerment. So they prioritize keeping people feeling separate, the oligarchs or whatever you want to call them, you know. Um, but I have to make a clarification here. Um, I've been in the conspiracy realm for years and years. Like, I've heard every single type of conspiracy idea that you can imagine, and delved into them all. And in my humble opinion, there's not some grand overarching New World Order or whatever you want to call it. I believe that rich people, plutocrats, people that are power mongers, the heads of corporations, sociopaths that raise, or sociopaths that work their way up through a power structure, all have similar ideologies. They all want power. They all want more. So naturally, when something happens, it's a major news event, they're going to react in concert with one another. If sociopaths rise to the ranks, and they're at the heads of power structures throughout the entire world. Now, if something comes up or happens, a social event that contradicts their power, they're going to naturally conspire with one another, just so long as it takes to squash the counterpoint, the counter argument, the counter meme that's moving through culture. And it's instinctual. Like when you're walking through the woods, and a branch moves towards your eye, and your eye kind of closes reflexively. These people fight the struggle to maintain their power reflexively. So from an open-minded person that's trying to see outside of this control paradigm, when they see it, it looks to them as if though there's this large, huge, giant conspiracy, and I don't see that.
I would totally agree with that assessment. It's automatic, and it's automatic for these people that rise to the top because they have, and for centuries we've been conditioned to see pathology as leadership. So
Oh, brilliant! Yes, brilliant! Yes, yes, yes.
we don't even know the difference anymore. And when we see a real leader, something in us is triggered, and we want to follow that person, but they see that leader too, that true leader, and they want to take that person down because they're
Mm-hmm.
real leaders. They'll take a bullet for you, and you'll take a bullet for them. That's a real leader, not somebody who's going to,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, a real leader will not ask anyone to do anything that they're not willing to do for themselves, and that is what inspires people to help you.
mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're very smart and right on, and I'm digging this conversation, Kira.
Me too. Me too. I'm digging it very much. Um, so here's another question, a little bit deeper about the whole myth of the American exceptionalism. Um,
Sure.
how does this fit into the patriot view? Because the patriots are really into the Constitution and defending the Constitution, and they believe in that. And it is a brilliant document, a brilliant legal document, um, but it's also
I
part of the
I
myth.
believe so.
You know?
Um, yeah, let me get into that a bit. I'm no constitutional scholar, but as a layperson, I think I have a decent grasp. And the original idea was that all the states would have their own sovereignty respectfully of one another, and that the federal government would not control the states. And the reasoning behind this was people, if you don't like the laws in Virginia, move to New Hampshire. If you don't like the laws in New Hampshire, move to New York. The idea was to promote diversity, and the states would have their own sovereign laws and independency from one another. Also, the idea of a county sheriff was that they were an elected representative of that group, and actually, the sheriff, according to the letter of the law and how it's written, is the most powerful entity in government, above the feds. But see, generationally over time, we have been conditioned to view state sovereignty as something that's almost non-existent. If there was state sovereignty, according to the original founders and the framers of the U.S. Constitution, you would have radically different laws and social political ideologies going on in parallel with one another, but not in opposition. You know what I'm saying? If you look at Thomas Jefferson, I think he's very misunderstood by the left because, Jefferson had close affiliations to Native people. A lot of the structure of the U.S. Constitution was based on confederacies of Native peoples.
Yes.
Mutual Defense Pact, but not having one central leadership. Dude had lots of Native people over at his house when he's, writing some of the his portions of, the government, his contribution. He was also very pro-anarchist. There was an anarchist movement during the early days of the American colonies. In the 1700s. I think people need to revisit Jefferson a little bit. When you go to the Jeffersonian Museum and you go in there, the memorial, actually, there's some very, very powerful words written. If you go inside and you look at the underside of the dome, it says, "I swear on the altar of Almighty God, eternal hostility towards every form of tyranny plaguing the hearts of man."
That's hardcore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
But over time, this idea that the states would be perceived as separate and sovereign has been overwhelmingly eroded away into this homogenous, the federal government has ultimate authority, and a lot of sheriffs don't even know that they have ultimate say. A county sheriff literally has the legal authority. If the president wants to show up, go somewhere else. No. You want 40 Secret Service? No. How about you have 25? Oh, no, you want to stay in this hotel? No, you have to stay at the other side of town. Seriously, the way the laws are written, the sheriff is the ultimate authority. And the sheriff was an elected official by the people. And the reason why, everything in the original Constitution was about the separation of powers, and the reason why is because the framers just rebelled violently and fought a war against a very rigid, vertically integrated power structure. But one of the things that people in the Patriot movement do is they get caught up in this, I believe, this idea that, romanticizing this fight against one monolithic, federal system when it's more complicated than that. I think the extreme left and the extreme right, in my humble opinion, have way more in common with one another than they have differences. If they could see those commonalities, if we could get back to the idea that you have many states in this country that have radically different social political ideologies, but they have a mutual defense pact, where if we're attacked as a nation, we all come together to defend one another, but we still can maintain sovereignty through the states, like the 10th Amendment stuff, like the commerce stuff between, a state having its own rights and whatnot. I think we would be better off if we would get back to that. But the right and the left have these wedge issues that they're seeing, that they're allowing themselves to be separate with, and I think it's kind of sad. I think one of the biggest, most revolutionary things that we could do is if you would get the radical left and the radical right to sit down with one another and have a conversation about what's important. What are our core commonalities? I think that's very dangerous and revolutionary.
It's happening on the streets. It's happening in social media, but it's not happening in media. Nobody wants to show that really the nitty gritty of that dialogue, because a lot of the things that the far left and the far right want are actually the same. They want freedom. They want their kids to not have to live in poverty and starvation.
Right.
And everybody, I think, is sick of taxes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that it's it's an unfair system, and that really just supports itself. So our
sure.
You get a job and then you're penalized for working because they take your money because you have a job. But what does that go to? It goes to the IRS, which is this huge federal system, and your money that you're paying them is just really paying for that IRS. But if we got rid of the IRS, we really wouldn't need that much money for the roads or for the military industrial complex. But to get back to this idea about the states being sovereign and having more power, and the federal government sort of taking over, and this idea has shifted over the centuries to more of a centralized form of power. Do you think that that's by design, or that's just the same old elite just wanting to make more money and protect what they got?
I think it's six of one and half a dozen of the other. The American political fabric, generationally, is something that's shifting, and it's very organic and living. So I think a little bit of both over time. But I think it's some of this instinctual sociopaths and people that exhibit sociopathy as being perceived as leaders, and certain groups, trying to assert their power. It's a little of both.
Do you think that the truth ever gets through the mainstream media? Do you think that there's ever glimmers there that people can latch onto, or do you think people need to just let that go and seek something independent?
I think people should look at both and think of a middle ground. Okay, I think all media is biased to an extent. Now, how biased, it just really depends on the nature of the person producing, or the corporation, or the corporate person. Oh, don't get me into that one. That's producing said media. So I think people would be better off if they would observe all media and think of middle perspectives between every extreme example. Like, think of a middle path. I think would be a more rational, well-rounded way of analyzing what data you're going to get. Because from the mainstream media, people are going to get a very polarized thing. And then from the alternative media, you're going to get a whole bunch of more honest bias. Like, for instance, when people come to my YouTube channel, Mike Bluehair, they know that they're going to be getting an anarchist perspective. They know that they're going to be watching a cop-watching channel. They'll know that that's my bias. I'm thinking of producing my media from a police accountability perspective. Although I do try to conduct what I do with integrity. And what I mean by that is I'm fair. When I film a police interaction, if the cop is doing good things and nice things for people, which happens quite a bit, if the cops are helping people, I mean, I could give hundreds of examples of cops doing good things. I'm going to report that. That's what I see. But they know that my bias is to actually be more on the side of the people. So if the cop F's up, I'm going to do my absolute best to bring to light and to see what justice I can get brought forth, whether it be making a legal complaint or crucifying them in the court of public opinion. But and that's what you get through all of the smaller media, alternative media outlets. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's truth. I would say that that's their truth. But I think a sane, rational way to deal with media is to understand the biases and to think of middle class between extremes, because compromise is where humanity will evolve. If you and I are having an argument, hypothetically, Kira, and there's only you and I there, it could get to a stalemate, and you may never want to speak to me again, or my feelings might be hurt, so I never want to come to grips with that part of my personality that Kira explained that makes me too uncomfortable. But if there was a third party there that was truly impartial, and actually think of it, that's what my therapy is all about, is an impartial person trying to find a compromise between the extreme positions. But if people could evolve their consciousness to the point to where they could think of middle paths between extreme examples, like this fight between the right and left over land rights versus the land is held in trust for everyone, so it's everyone's land. That's the way the left perceive it, and the right perceive it as though property rights are very important, and the ranchers need to have access to their grazing rights, and the federal government needs to butt out and stop trying to control them with the BLM. If everybody on all sides of this argument could see a middle path of compromise, that's where people evolve, and they can actually start thinking of compromises as opposed to I want to win. I want to dominate. My perspective is right, and F you.
Well, here's what I'd like to see as far as a middle path between the ranchers using trust land and natives. And here's a way forward, actually, that I see between those two communities in coming together. When natives were rounded up and put on reservations, many of them were here's your plot of land, and here's your plot, and here's your plot. And so as time went on, those plots of land, which really don't belong to natives, they're held in trust by the government, got fractionated between each generation's sons and daughters. So as it stands now, I'll give my husband as an example. He has trust land in Kansas on the Prairie Band Potawatomi Reservation, and does not have the right to know what other relatives have that land with him. And so what that means is he has no control over how that land is used. The government decides, and they lease it out, frequently to ranchers or farmers or, usually non-native.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. And then they're paid like, pennies on the dollar. So it's a ridiculous system. So I would like to see these ranchers question that system and say, hey, you know what? This is the native perspective. Like, these guys are really living good compared to us with their ranching, even though, to them, they're ranchers. They don't live an easy life. Ranching is not an easy life, but it does make some money, a lot more than natives are making.
Yeah, ranching is a hard work, but it's not a reservation.
Right.
It's not
exactly
right. I got you.
Yeah. So while these ranchers are questioning this trust system, it should all be questioned, including how the raw deal that natives are getting with this trust system.
Right. It's where the feds come in and they lease off the land to whomever, and they make their backroom deals, and then the natives get screwed. Yeah.
Get totally screwed. And the way that you can live well is to have control over your land. So you have to be able to make decisions about, okay, are we going to grow this? Are we going to do that? Or are
Right.
we going to put up a windmill? I mean, that's the basis of prosperity.
Actually, there when
Over a certain, your 40 acres and a
right,
mule,
right,
um, as
right.
simple as it gets.
Stewardship of the land. I mean, I believe that property ownership is very important, and as long as you're acting as a good steward, you should be allowed to do whatever you want with the property that you own. And like Native peoples not having complete sovereignty over the land that they were given makes zero sense to me. It uh, I find it offensive that government would be doing this and a multitude of other horrors in my name. You know?
Oh yeah, and that's just the beginning. I mean, it gets deeper than that. So they're getting pennies on the dollar. It gets put into the land trust funds, right? And then, oops, it went into the general fund. I don't, well, billions. Well, we don't know where it is. Well, oops,
Oh yeah, it
oopsie,
goes to the prison industrial complex or the military
oopsie.
industrial complex or
Right.
Israel or wherever they want to put it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's
So
study the effects of global warming on fruit flies.
yeah, it's just one screw after the other. That's why I say that Indian country needs more anarchy, because even the
Right
tribal
on.
even the tribal governments are set up like mini federal governments. So they're set up in the same parliamentary image as the oppressor. So
Oh
um,
right. So are you saying that they're acting like little oppressors?
absolutely,
I'm just asking you as a native person. Okay.
yeah, no, yes, absolutely. But I mean,
Okay.
the thing is, it's not a conscious thing like we're going to oppress you because we're the tribal government. It's by design, so it's by design that we're going to have this, um, and it masks as an old way. It masks as the old um, idea of democracy, but it's really not. It's sometimes tribes do a really really good job, and I would say Prairie
Mhm.
and Potawatomis have done a good job, with their casino and setting up trust for the kids. And it's not like good things aren't done under these systems,
Mhm.
but it's not a free system. It's still it's
It's
still a
still a
reflection of the oppressor's system.
so it's very much like the same vertical integration of power you have in the federal government system. I'm not meaning to talk for you, but I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it's parliamentary.
Okay.
It's a parliamentary setup, just and
Well,
the federal
I have a
government says we have this unique government to government relationship with the tribes. And they make it sound all nice and everything, but when it comes down to it, there really isn't sovereignty for tribes. I
right.
mean, that's what they're fighting
It's
for. They're still fighting.
more like a kind of dependence, right?
Yeah, yeah, right down
Okay.
to you. Yeah, because
Well,
they have no control over the land, really. Step
this is
by
a good
step.
time to bring up stuff that I talked about with Ryan Bundy.
Ah,
Um, yeah, I interviewed the guy just briefly, and I was going to get a sit down with him, but I uploaded a video of me describing my initial feelings after meeting him, and let me share it with your audience. Um, I walk up to him, he's in the middle of working. They're like building the stage for this. Um, what do you call it? They're doing a presentation of some educational stuff for the ranchers, and he turns around and he sees me standing there with my blue dreadlocks, my mohawk, and I take it off and I put my bear hat on, so I have this big, silly, goofy bear hat, and he's this conservative Mormon dude that's like, salt of the earth kind of conservative guy, you know. I walk over to him and say hi, and there's another guy standing beside me, and he asks me my political perspective. This is Ryan Bundy who says this to me. And he sits there and politely listens for about 6 or 8 minutes while I explain to him what anarchism is. Doesn't interrupt me, doesn't judge me, doesn't act like an a-hole, and then he explains his perspective, which is basically he believes that, you know, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and that any laws that are outside of that Constitution, any states statutes, or any kind of regulations that are outside of that is no laws at all. And he was, treating me with, no judgment. And I've been conditioned through the mainstream media that these guys are a bunch of ultra conservative yahoos, that are judgmental and blah blah blah. And I had some preconceived notions, because of the massive amount of propagandizing that I got about what they're like. And that's not what I saw when I met the man. So I saw a person that's very honest, that's very committed to what he believes, right or wrong, whatever. I don't have to have someone's political perspective or ideology to respect them. But yeah, I mean, I came out of the conversation feeling, and I didn't want to ram a camera in his face the very first time I met him. But and then later I interviewed him, and I just asked him 3 or 4 questions, and then he had to run off. But I scheduled a longer meeting, but it's never happened. But basically, I asked him the very last question I asked him before he ran off. I asked him about Native peoples, and I'm thinking how you guys have been screwed. And I said, have you guys at the refuge tried to reach out to the natives and make them part of this conversation and ask them what they would like you to do or ask for? And he said they will not communicate, they will not correspond, they will not answer any of our phone calls. So I'm telling you that the people out at the refuge wanted very much to involve the natives in the conversation, but I saw the statement in the mainstream media of the tribal elders out here, and they were of the opinion that they're just not legitimate. They would rather talk about their land rights issues with a ground squirrel. They didn't say that, but basically you're illegitimate and we don't want you here and we're not going to talk to you. So
Yeah.
that was kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, and also what I got from that too, their statement was, you're disrupting our lives. Our kids can't go to school. We want you out of here. And that's basically what it came down to was, we don't want you here. You're only going to cause trouble, because you have to think of it from their perspective. They've gotten screwed over and over and over. And by, bringing that sort of, bringing that protest in, it's just going to bring the feds. It's just going to bring, trouble down on their community. And so they're coming at it from a protective perspective. We have to protect our people.
As a Native person, as somebody on the inside of that community, do you think it would have went down a lot better on the side of the Bundys if they would have approached the Native people first and said, hey, we're going to do this. We want your help and guidance in this. We want you to be involved. We want I'm not saying blessing, because at that, we want your participation, because you have just as much legitimate right to the land as the ranchers, or even more so. Do you think it would have went better for them if they would have, elicited Native allies beforehand?
Oh, absolutely. That would be the time to have done that. That's why they didn't get a response. It was like, well, you're already here. So, you're already here disrupting everything. And, it's kind of an afterthought, on their part.
Okay.
In
right.
attempting to contact them after they're already there, and after
right.
their children have already been home, from school for who knows how long, Well,
that was all the feds, right?
Yeah.
That was right. The local people here, this community is all divided. Like, there's basically 3 kind of attitudes that I bump into. The Bundy militia protests are a bunch of jerks, and we want them gone. That's one idea that people are telling me. The other one is that they did a really great job. The Bundys did, or the militia or whatever, did a really good job of bringing up the ideas of the land use and the stuff that went on with the Hammond family, and they want people to leave because, they want them to go home now. They feel like they did their job but still go home. And then you have a bunch of ranchers that are very pro what they do, and they
Wow.
want to give them support.
We're already to the end of the show. This could totally go on so much longer. Hey, we're going to be in touch with you about some more stuff.
With the FBI and the sheriff's department to come to a peaceful resolution. He went and approached the FBI compound last night, and I was also in the car with him when he went and approached the sheriffs, because the FBI directed him over there. And he was putting forth the idea of getting some people to come down to the refuge and ask people to come out peacefully, when all of a sudden the sheriffs just grabbed Santilli and arrested him.
At minimum, even if those that choose to stay back there of their own free will, I can't force them to go. Absolutely. Those that choose to stay back there, we need to get the women and the children out of there. Okay, period. I know that will happen. That's guaranteed. Guaranteed. They will come out. Okay. No women and children are going to be. There are women and children there. Do you know this?
Yeah. How many?
Quite a few.
Yes.
Okay. Please allow us to go up there and get them. They will be back with us, guaranteed. That is a guarantee. Those that choose to stay back there, I know that I can convince, I can persuade that we need to disband this right now. Okay?
I'll say this, I absolutely appreciate the offer. Let us work on it.
Absolutely. I'll be standing by right here. You let me know what I need to do.
Okay, yeah,
Okay?
that'll work.
Thank you.
How long do you think?
Give us a few minutes.
Thank you.
So they're going to discuss it, and
There are people that I know and love. Okay, there are patriots there. Okay? There are men, beautiful souls, young men. There are women and there are children.
Anybody you're worried about?
Standing by right here. You let me know what I need to do.
Okay, yeah,
Okay?
that'll work.
Thank you.
How long do you think?
Give us a few minutes.
Thank you.
so they're going to discuss it, and
There are people that I know and love. Okay, there are patriots there. Okay, there are men, beautiful souls, young men. There are women and there are children.
Anybody you're worried about?
Anybody I'm worried about?
No, I mean, with
The wall.
no, I know you worry about all of them. What do you think is happening?
I have to look them in the eyes and say it's time to go. Those who choose to stay if they're only free will, it's up to them. I need to be able to talk to them. The FBI going up there, that's not a good scenario for them. We don't want them to get harmed. We don't want you guys to get harmed. I need to be able to go up there and talk to them and say, this is over. This is stupid. It's done. It's time to go. Okay? Gunshots being fired, that's stupid. Nobody wants that. It's required. That's right now. Can you guys confirm what happened?
We're not going to confirm anything.
You don't.
Okay?
I mean, to me personally.
No, we're not going to confirm anything. Okay? You can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. That's not something we can deal with.
I understand. Okay, I understand. Yeah, I'm making a genuine offer here to go get women and children, get them out of there.
are you arresting Pete Santilli right now, sir? Of course I will. I'm just going to document, okay? I'll stand back here at a safe distance and document them arresting Pete, okay?
Hey, stay in the car. Stay in the car.
If you need me to back up, I'll back up, officer, okay?
Hey, why am I under arrest?
Hey, bring it back up.
Okay, sure. Just tell me where.
Back up to the car.
Okay.
Back up to the car.
Sir,
Back up.
put the camera away right now. Right now, please.
I'm documenting, sir.
Hey, you can document from the car.
Okay, sure. I'll go into the car, sir.
All right, thank you.
I'm not going to put the camera away.
Any firearms?
No, sir. There's no firearms in the car, sir. Please don't aim the rifle at people.
No one's aiming a rifle at you.
Back. This is a perimeter now.
In the car, sir. Please don't aim the rifle at people. No, sir. There's no firearms in the car, sir. Please don't aim the rifle at people. No, sir. There's no firearms in the car, sir. Please don't aim the rifle at people.
This is a Do not come.
Can I walk away from here so I can film safely,
Stay
sir?
right here till they're done.
Okay. I'm following your orders.
Yes, sir. You can film.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to document Santilli's arrest. Okay.
All you want. Just stay right there.
Okay. I will not move.
Sir, they're gonna back your car. If you want to ride, you gotta get in it. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for complying.
Yes. I appreciate you respecting my right to document, officer.
Yes, sir.
Please move back.
How far do you want me to go back?
Go all the way back to the other.
I was actually there when Pete Santilli.
In other words, comply or die is kept. We've been supposed to be live streaming from Oregon today. I don't know what the hell's going on. We're funding Sherry to be out there to live stream. She went up. I know she went up to Grant County to try to get an interview. Grant County Sheriff, which was a fail. Coming back, I guess we're going to be live from the protest. I just don't know. She's been almost unreachable today because driving around the mountains. They did go up the site where the shooting occurred. Try to get some more information.
I'm sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box.
She's either busy or on the road. She was headed back from Portland today. All right, that's all I got for right now. I'm going to let this buffer out and then go on standby until our reporter gets to wherever she's going. That's good. When you're sitting in the studio trying to get things organized and things aren't working out the way they're supposed to, you tend to. I've paced out a pair of shoes today. All right, as I said, I'm going to let this buffer out and we'll be back as soon as we can with the stream up. Thanks.